So here we are. Notice no one put something on the board. I wish no one had done that last week because I left something up last week, which was my blue marker, and it's gone now. So, but that's okay. I have an orange one in case somebody wants to draw on the board. Let me just, since we have fewer people, I thought maybe we'll not do so much in groups, but do it together and see how that goes. And the first thing that I was thinking about, and that actually referenced the bulletin board back there, is we talked about at the end, the idea of a treasure that was the church. And you all were talking about that, but I don't think we had the time to share that. So just wondering if any of you did some thinking and reflecting and in your groups about what you thought was the treasure of the church, and if so, would you be willing to share that?
Well, for me, the treasure of the church is the community that I get. I didn't have a lot of community growing up, and my family of origin is trained to put it nicely.
You've said that before, and it was touching, and so that you're saying it again is more touching.
Well, from the time I was 6 until I was 11 or 12, I was molested by an older brother. And there were, it was just a very odd dynamic in my whole household. It was very patriarchal and just very strange. So we didn't have church while I was growing up, unless I was spent the night with my grandmother and went to her church, and occasionally went to church with one of the few school friends that I had. So coming up here and going to St. Paul's, I mean, I've been to Episcopal churches with my older sister. I was late going to college. I didn't go to college until I was away from home until I was 35. So I was living in the dorms at 35. And went to St. Paul's, and it was just like immediately felt at home. Fort Collins felt like home, and I've never really felt that before. And, you know, by the second week I was in the choir. And it just became community, it became family, it became a safe place. And it became a place that saved my life. So for me, that's the treasure of the church.
Sounds like a treasure. Anybody else?
I know when I started going to the Methodist church from the Baptist church, that really felt like a treasure because, you know, the Bible was what I think meant to be there rather than this word says you do this and this word says you do that. And a wonderful, loving Sunday school teacher. This was when I was about 11 or 12. And so, yes, and so ever since then, every church I've been to has felt like a treasure. Even if I thought they were preaching strange things, it still did. I mean, even if they were those hardline people, I didn't attend the church, but I would go with someone, two of them. But just having the people around that all loved each other and things like that.
Thank you. Yes.
I think it's the community for me that we have and we've grown together. But it's also every Sunday I come and I sit and I hear whoever it is saying to go out and serve the Lord. And to me, it's a reminder to be kind and to be loving to everyone. And whether it be church members, everyone. It's just that community and how we're called upon.
I'm gonna say something nice about director while you're all here, so make sure you clap or something afterwards. Say it, but I just bet, after hearing about 3 people said it right in a row, that they really hadn't much community in their life until I came here, with the exception of Methodists, and I have a lot of Methodist friends. And I like Methodists a lot. But I just bet for you to come in and say something, and you to say something about the importance of community, finding it here, I just bet your rector, without being obvious about it, is just busting her button. Wow, they finally got it. So, so make sure you say, yes, and it's all because of you, because at least a good portion of it would be because of her. So.
Good thing she has a pullover sweater and not buttons, because otherwise.
I gotta say, one of the treasures I find in the church is it's still one of the places you can brush up against people who are not like you. You know, we have such affinity groups outside of the church. But the church is a conglomeration of a lot of different kinds of people who feel differently, think differently, believe differently. And it's still a place where we brush up against one another and we're encouraged to love each other, even though we're different. I don't think there are that many places that do that anymore.
Well, that and socioeconomical differences. Because here I am, that I'm bringing in $250 a month. And, you know, and there's people around us that have quite a bit more money than I do. And it doesn't matter, we're people here.
The whole notion that we are in community and that we can trust one another and find different ideas that we haven't even thought about. What is to me, as I get older and older, is I want to be with people who are journeying with me and I with them. And that to me is such a blessing.
Did not hear the question, so if I'm off base, that's.
It may be better than the question I wrote, so go ahead.
I just have to comment that, I found that community on Elizabeth Street. And the group, on Elizabeth Street, went through a lot. But it remained community. Exactly what Lynn was saying and what other people have said. There were, and Betsy said too, where we had different opinions, strong opinions, but we remained a community and we remained in love, and we worked through it. And I have to tell you about our rector here. When we hired her, we said, and she kind of gulped and said, "Of course." I said, you know,
She didn't have to mean that, though.
but we told her, you know, we have been led by the Spirit, and we are hiring you to walk alongside us, not tell us what to do.
Who does believe that?
I didn't say she didn't, I think she didn't have to.
Well,
I think it's important to get the message. She does.
and she has proven it over and over.
It's even better.
But in terms of community, it's not something new. I found it in 2014 when I walked into.
Found it in 1999.
I remember our conversations.
Pete, what about you?
Okay, well, I'm just gonna say that we moved here a little over 3 years ago. Because our daughter, who's been here for 27 years, suggested that perhaps we should live near one of our daughters, which we weren't at the time. And when we moved here, we immediately started looking for a church. And we were looking for community. Because that's terribly important to us. So we come a little distance to come to church.
Well, so does our rector.
Yeah, well.
Closer to the rector than the church.
Yeah. Right.
We both live in Windsor, you see.
I spent a couple of months in Scotland working church, and the person who I was, and she had to leave for a while, and when she came back, I found out that she actually lived on an island, and that she had to get up early in the morning to take the ferry over to the church, and she didn't always make it, and so it was for her, so Windsor isn't that hard.
Understand.
Okay, so I'll put a box around that, what we've talked about. Because there are a couple of things that I wanted to make sure that we get around to talking about just briefly, or more my talking than your talking. You haven't done that much, and so I hope you forgive me on that. Because there are a couple of things that I meant to just kind of interject one of these weeks, and we're moving along, and I haven't interjected that into it, and so I'm going to take 4 or 5 minutes to interject. One of those things, and this wasn't on anything, some of you have heard Brian McLaren through what they share with the vestry a couple of weeks ago. But the first thing is not, and I want to talk a little bit about the importance of monasteries. And specifically, I'm thinking of Roman Catholic understanding of monasteries. And the reason I want to do it is because, one, it is so much a part of Roman Catholicism, both for monasteries as well as nunneries. But also they have a unique place in the life of the church, which makes them more open to possibilities than most of us think. Because if we go to a monastery, or even more so if we watch it on television or something, and there, I remember, of course I have to tell a story, and this is Irish. When you go to, in Northern Ireland, there are 2 cathedrals in Armagh. Armagh is the place where St. Patrick put his, didn't wear green, by the way, he wore blue and red. But that's a whole different story. But on top of the hill, there is the Anglican Cathedral, St. Patrick Cathedral. And they've moved a long way to being nice to the Roman Catholics, and the Roman Catholics being nice to the Episcopalians. Because the first time I saw that Roman Catholic, that Cathedral of Armagh, after they said what time the services and everything, there was this maybe 10 words. And it said underneath it, on this very spot, St. Patrick founded this cathedral and began Christianity in Northern Ireland. In that church, there is a spectacular, lovely window. I just love to go back and spend time looking at that. It is a very large, tall glass, stained glass of Saint Bridget. She has green eyes, beautiful green eyes. And she has flowing red hair that goes over her back and down into her leg, her back. And she has on a black robe. Does anybody know anything about Ireland in that regard? Does anybody want to guess what she's wearing a black robe for? It is a druid costume that she's wearing. And to just look at those penetrating eyes, that was that cathedral and the ancient understanding of the Irish about Saint Bridget and how she was important and why. I'm gonna leave that there, except to say, if you then go out of that cathedral and you go down the steps and maybe, I don't know, 100 yards or so, there is a brand new cathedral. Very beautiful. It's a Roman Catholic cathedral. And they don't have on this very spot there. And the Anglicans, by the way, took that on this very spot down, which was good. And I remember going in that place and going around and over in, if you think of where we worshiped this morning, say about where the organ is, there is a mural, a fresco actually, and it is of Saint Bridget. She doesn't have green eyes. And I don't know the color of her hair because you don't see it. Because there, the portrayal of Saint Bridget is as a 15th century Roman Catholic nun with the cowl on her head and the flowing back and that sort of thing. Both of them are true, by the way. One of the powers of Roman Catholicism and the use of monasteries is that in many ways, what that does is allow some people who are very greatly, probably spiritually, they were drawn into the cathedral, but then, drawn into the monastery, but then they go away to college and they go away to seminary, and then they have years upon years upon years of being close and touched by their own spiritual experience in a monastery setting. They begin to have very specific understandings, and a particular Franciscan group would tend to be one way, and a Dominican group would be another, and just a variety of like that. And in some ways they do it because they're drawn to it, but some ways they do it for their own protection. And what I mean by that is that one of the things the monasteries do is provide protection for people who see things differently than what the bishop or the pope or the curia and that sort of thing. And while that is an important thing to me because it says something about understanding of spirituality from the Roman Catholic perspective, rather than think, well, there's something really wrong with them about the way they do things. There's also something profoundly great that they say, it is important for me to be able to speak and grow spiritually, and I kind of have to hide it to do it. And so I just wanted to give that to you. If some of you have been taking EFM and you've started to read the first 1,000 years of Christianity, when they get into first 3,000 years of Christianity, they begin to talk about why one monastery is this way and one religious order is this way, another one's this way and everything. And you begin to see the differences that they do. And that is something that's very powerful and important. And that's not to say the Anglican picture of Saint Bridget is wrong, but it says something that speaks where other people don't. There's also a story about how Saint Bridget was actually made, the bishop who ordained her actually read the wrong prayer, and she got consecrated as a bishop, and this was in 500 AD, and nobody said, "Oh no, that couldn't have happened" or anything, and yet for her, the rest of her life, she always sat with the bishops. So, I'll let you decide what you want about that. Also want to, now this is something we did talk about, and those of you who've read the book, how many of you remember reading about the doctrine of discovery? And tell me about it.
The doctrine of discovery is when the church said that it was okay for people who were exploring the new world to claim whatever was there and whoever was there as possessions of the Christian world. And they enslaved or killed everybody that they came in contact with.
That's true. And in fact, what happened was the Pope actually divided the world up. And that was, it was like 20 years before Martin Luther, who kind of said, well, that was a good idea, a Pope, but actually we're not going to do it that way. And that brought about the Reformation. It is, the book says that it was in 1492, it was actually in 1493, because it was a year after Christopher Columbus came to the New World. When they came back, and the Portuguese were actually going around Africa rather than that way. And so when they came back, the Pope decided, well, we need to have something so that we've got these Muslims over here who are really dangerous, and we've got to do something to kind of overwhelm them. So we're going to let the Portuguese go to the east, and the Spanish will go to the west, and they are to make Christians of them and do it the right way. The Vatican used that as a real struggle on how do we create a replacement. And indeed, Roman Catholicism deals periodically with there's theology, and then you have to replace it with the way it's supposed to be. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today as we now go back to the rest of the book. But before I leave, if there are any comments or interesting, or if you know something about that, and I'm sure a lot of you do, I hope you'll share that.
Still paying the price of it.
Yeah. Let's see, how many do we have? Well, we can do this, we can do this with fours, and we'll just do it that way. I'd like you to get together and talk a little bit about, and this is from the reading that we were to do today. What is your image of God? And just choose forth and kind of go to your corner, and I'll give you about 10 minutes.
We feel that everybody's image of God is different because everybody has different experiences. And we feel that that image is changeable because we change. I, for one, and several of us here, when we were young, we had that image of the white-haired, white-bearded old man on the throne, dispensing wrath and vengeance, which thankfully none of us still have that vision.
You'd be surprised.
Well,
Always argue.
none of us. And I have this kind of, I said amorphous, because I see this changing being, because if God is created in our image, we are none of us alike. You know, yes, we all have 2 arms, 2 legs. Well, no, we don't. All of us have 2 arms and 2 legs. But, you know, we're most of us born with 2 arms and 2 legs, and so forth. But all the differences of racial and gender and all that stuff creates this whole mixing pot. And John brought up the image that was created of Jesus with the mosaic of all the different people from, you know, thousands of pictures. And that's really appropriate because God is all those people. And so God's appearance and image can be so changeable. But God is the mountains and God is the sea. He's that foundation, that firm foundation, and that depth of commitment. So that for us is, you know, just kind of that. God is everything and everywhere. So while we have the ability to make decisions, good and bad, He's still there surrounding us and they're willing to support us.
Internal.
Thank you.
And eternal. Internal.
Anybody else have something?
Well, I decided to try thinking of the word love as God this week. And so it works pretty well, but then there needs to be truth. But when we talk about firm foundations, I don't see that there's firm foundations. I mean, mountains fall and, you know, into the sea rises and covers everything. And
Don't go to Antarctica this week.
No.
and so I don't really know what that's about, but I think I just believe in a creator. But it's, you know, way beyond people. And I really believe that animals have reasoning. And I saw this one video of this baby monkey, and he was hugging these ducks, little tiny ducklings. And he would, and and he would reach over and find another one and hug him, and he was a baby though, too. But he kept watching out for all these little ducklings. And it just seemed like, I think God is everywhere, not, and the trees too. The trees are amazing. So, that's,
One more, anybody? No? If you will turn to, yes, it's about page 92 in the book. And it goes on, goes on. You remember where he talks about basically church 1.0, 2.0. How did it help, or was it confusing?
it was kind of helpful.
Well, the author talks about how there's basically 5 different steps of the whole religious ladder, if you will. And I didn't know whether that was going to be confusing or whatever, and so let me just go over it briefly, if you'll look at it. 1.0 is, does anybody read a book by Annie Lamott? And one of the things, and she's not really, she's much wiser than she lets on, but a 1.0 is what Annie Lamott says. I want what I want when I want it. And the other side of the coin is when she prays, remember what she says? Please, 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 thank you, thank you, thank you. That's all she claims she says. I think she says a lot more than that. But anyway, 1.2 is what your parents want you to learn when you're about 3 or 4 or 5.
If I should die before I wake.
There you go. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. 3.0 is you're in school, you go to Sunday school or you go to parochial school, and it's time to learn what the church wants you to know. So it's about rules of fair play. It's about doing what you want. I think I mentioned to you all a couple of weeks ago about the man at the Vatican who said that here's what we believe about everything, and now it's your job to become a Roman Catholic even if you're an Episcopalian. You got to stop that and do it the right way, because those are the rules. We tell you the rules. You don't have to learn the rules. We're going to tell them to you, but it is your job to do it and just keep doing it. And if you miss it, go to confession and do it over again. 4.0 is when somebody spends their time spiritually, emotionally, wanting to be a profoundly believing Christian. They want to learn about social justice. They want to learn about spirituality. They want to listen and be open to changing and growing spiritually. The one difference is, along the way, if you're not, you get to a point where, let's say you believe one thing, and I'll just use this, and I don't mean to offend anybody about it, but the big issue right now in the American church and in the Roman Catholic churches is abortion. And at one point, at 4.0, you can believe that abortion is okay, but then the rulemakers come along and say, no, you can't do that. Now, I'm not asking anybody to confess anything here, but I am saying at some point in 4.0, you're supposed to, if you are a person who believes that abortion is a good thing, the rule maker comes along and says, no change. And that's just one of the things you have to do. And then there is 5.0. And I urge you to read this. You can turn to page 92, and I'm going to read several sections in here that are very close. And if it is true, to follow Jesus is to change one's understanding of God. To accept Jesus and to accept the God Jesus loved is to become an atheist in relationship to the supreme being of violent, dominating power. Bottom of the page, page 92. In Christ, God is supreme, but not in the old discredited paradigm of supremacy, or what Bishop Pope in 1493 said. In Christ, God is supreme, but not the old discredited paradigm of supremacy. God is the supreme healer, the supreme friend, the supreme lover, and the supreme giver who self-empties himself in gracious love for all. That's what they're saying is characteristic of 5.0. This is both extremely good theology and something that is easy to get lost in. Richard Rohr is going through a series of these right now and talking about things. He speaks of dualism a lot, and he's holding on to this in a variety of ways. And so if you do, I know some of you have read Richard Rohr, but also you can look at this here because I find this to be helpful. We're about out of time. I'm going to just tag a couple of things, and I want to, and then close with something. If you look on page 124.
120 what?
124. You can see my wife told me the other day, one of the things that's happened to my face is it's moved over this way. I thought that was cruel.
That's the left, right.
I just thought it was cruel.
I did not pay it.
Actually, you did, but we're going to continue. On page 124, question under conversation. Number 2, respond to this statement. I started to think, no, I'm wrong. I'm going to drop to 6. I'll come back to this one. Respond to this statement. For Christ to remain important, we must preserve an innocent, literal way of reading the Bible. What do you think about that? You agree?
Yeah,
Okay.
but
Literal?
yes, because they meant it literal. It's not that what I would think should have happened there would be what they said happened. And it's not that I think that I should do what it says, but I think that that's what they said.
Okay, thank you. I'm not arguing. I'm thinking. Does somebody else had something to say. I thought I saw a hand out of the corner of my eye.
I don't think that's what they said at all.
Okay,
I don't think we'll ever know. There's been so many translations, or mistranslations, and abuses of the scripture, and you have to take the sense of it and make the most of it. But I will never go with it.
And part of the problem is the writers. Was those 70, 90 years later, and they didn't know Jesus.
Well, they have an agenda and an audience. They're aiming that. What's it us? We're reading their mail.
Yeah.
Sorry.
all right, let's look at number 2 on that same page. Respond to this statement. I started to think that my understanding of God was making me less open, less loving, less generous person than I otherwise would have been.
Sounds like a literalist.
You sure? Okay.
You mean? Yeah, what do you mean? Hmm?
Taking things literally.
Well, I
you
mean,
can
are you
read-
saying that if the Bible made you do that?
No.
Oh, well, then that's, I think this is saying that the Bible did make them do that.
But it doesn't say what made him start thinking that.
Well, the way I read it was that he was looking for something else than what he was taught.
The person asking the question.
Yeah.
The person is making a statement here, not really a question.
Mm-hmm. Now, he could have said, so I walked away. Or he could have said, I looked deeper. Or,
We don't know what he said.
yeah, I could have, well, you've told this story many times about how you started one place in your spiritual journey, you ended up here, and it was a long way to get from here to here. So. Yeah. And I thought of you when I saw this a while back. We've come to the end, so I need to tell you a couple of things quickly. I'm not going to be able to be here next week. Jan is going to take the place. She's also going to do the last class, which is going to be if you are on Vestra, you've seen it. If not, really encourage you to invite your friends, because Brian McLaren doing his last video, and it's my way of thinking by far the best of what he did. And it brings together some things that I wish we had more time with, but.
Are you speaking about next week's meeting or the following?
No, I'm talking about 2 weeks, but then I started to say that I won't be here this week, and I thought I was, but Jan's gonna go ahead with it. The reason I'm not gonna be here next week is, I have 2 daughters in Dallas. One of them has 3 children. Last week, they had a fire, and it's a giant mess. And I've got to go down. So, we thought we were going to leave after class next week, but we've got to go. And I apologize that I have to. I will say one thing, and this is one of the things that I can say and then get out the door before nobody can say, how dare you say that? One of the things that if you really wanted to get into this kind of thing, and what the church can become, we don't have to live in the 21st century. I would urge you to, there was a book written in the 30s and 40s by 2 outstanding theologians, Reinhold and H. Richard Niebuhr. And what what the book was called Christ and Culture. I wish a whole lot of people would read this book going forward, because it deals with something that is very much on the plate of anybody who's trying to pay attention to Christianity. And what I'm talking about is white Christian America, and what that argues, and why it's important, and what is okay, what God wants us to be as far as Christ and culture and society and politics meld together, and when they should be miles apart, and when they should be actual, for one of my words, not theirs, an enemy of each other, and say, you know, Christianity means real Christians just simply don't do this stuff. It is a profound document and worth lots of conversation. And so, as I say, I'm walking out the door. So, but I would urge you, if you get a chance, to look that up, and maybe one Lenten subject, you can look at something like that again, because it's extremely, extremely important. Thank you. I've had a wonderful time with you. I hope I haven't driven you crazy, but I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and a lighter note than Niebuhr. I read the book that he gave us the other day, which was the story of the settlers and the pioneers, and I'm returning it, and, anyone is welcome to, well, I suspect that Ken would be. But
He wants to take it with him, but I need to.
it's just delightful. It's very short.
And
very
then
short.
your glasses.
And
And a coat.
the pictures, there's a large picture with each one, so I highly recommend it. That
And they can sing.
we have, you can sing along with it, but there's a picture of God in there, there's a picture of, two pictures of God, 2 pictures of Jesus, 2 pictures of, so, anyway, it's delightful, but here you go.